Hi again. So, for the 25 of you that signed up to this channel on the basis of really very little from my side, I thought I'd better make a prediction for the forthcoming US election. Deal with the information what you will, obviously. Don't bet the farm. I'm just a guy with an opinion. That said, I think my opinion is worth at least considering. If only because I haven't lost a bet on an election since 2000 when I actually got the result right, but the outcome wrong. It was the disputed 2000 election where Al Gore won the popular vote but lost the election. So let's cut to the chase. The most profitable thing you can probably do, I'd be very surprised if this doesn't work, is exploit the fact that when the results come in, the initial results will favour Trump. And I don't think the electorate's smart enough to catch on to this. They didn't in the last few elections. The initial results will look very good for Trump indeed. So there is a hedging opportunity. That's probably the safest way to make money on this. It's not guaranteed by any means, but I would put the probability of making money from that higher than any other possible combination of wages. So basically, back Trump before the results start coming in. As they start coming in, Trump's odds will nosedive. Have a bet on Kamala to ensure you make a profit, whatever happens. Now, my actual prediction is this: I think Trump's going to win. I think he'll win by just over 3%. The reason is that when you strip away all the partisanship and the political punditry, which is mostly valueless, and you actually look at the numbers, Trump is slightly ahead in the polls. So if those are accurate, he will very likely win. If the polls are not accurate, if there is some kind of bias, then historically that generally favours the Republicans and has done so in the most recent two elections. And actually, centrists all around the globe tend to underperform on their polling. They tend to outperform their polling, underperform in the election. So if you view Kamala Harris as a centrist, she will underperform her current position, which is already behind Trump. And I'm guessing going on the historical model, which seems most appropriate for a Kamala versus Trump matchup, which is the Hillary versus Trump matchup, there'll be a bias of just over 2% to Trump. So if you add that to the 1% he already has from the opinion polls, then you're talking about a victory of 3%. Now, of course, the US doesn't have a popular vote-based system. It has the Electoral College. But if you look at the individual states, the Republican bias is generally even stronger. Now, an important part of making a wager like this is considering the counter-arguments to your own opinion. It's an important thing to state that you should basically never wager on anything where your personal feelings interfere too much. So be very careful of that. If you have a passionate opinion on this election, you might want to sit it out. It's not a good idea. It's really difficult to be objective. Now, there are two major arguments in favour of a Kamala victory at this stage that I've heard recently. One is that she will mobilise the grassroots. And this indeed seemed to be occurring when her candidacy was announced a few months back. The idea being that she will pick up the grassroots of the Democratic Party and win by mobilising the base, much as Obama did initially. And that did seem plausible for a while. Unfortunately for Kamala, that doesn't seem to be materializing as time progresses. The reality of the situation is she's not especially progressive. That's just a fact. She's more of a centrist Democrat, and centrists, as I said, they tend to underperform their polling. I would keep an eye on things like turnout, particularly amongst progressive segments like young voters. If those are higher than we expect, then I might revise my opinion. In that case, it might be justified to make a wager on her. It very much depends on what the odds are. The other argument is so asinine, I almost hesitate to mention it, but it's along these lines that because the Republicans, well, because Trump has been understated in the polling in multiple elections, this time that won't happen. And this just seems to be based on a statistical fallacy. If things keep happening, they will probably continue to keep happening unless there's some very good reason why they should stop happening. And I haven't seen any explanation of how, like, polling companies changed their methodology to allow for the pro-Trump bias. Just haven't seen any kind of plausible justification for that. It's just people seem to think that we're due for a change, and I can't really see any rational basis for that at all. Now, the numbers I'm getting suggest that if you wager on Trump and there is no bias in the polls, then the 1.7 you can get Betfair at the moment it's basically break even, maybe a tiny positive expectation. If there's any kind of bias towards the Republicans at all, then the edge on that wager could be quite significant, over 20% if it's 2.1% as it was with Hillary in 2016. And if it's the 4% it was in 2020 with Biden, then you're talking about a wager with a 50% expectation. That's huge. You very rarely get an expectation that size. It's interesting to note that even in the case of the 4% Trump bias, which is probably the largest it's going to be, but even in that case, there's still actually a 25% chance that Kamala wins just through sheer variance. So this is not a lock by any means. I mean, the very concept of a lock is kind of stupid. It's something compulsive gamblers tend to refer to. So unfortunately, there's a good chance that even if my judgment is completely right here, that the bet will be off. Conversely, if Trump does win, that doesn't really vindicate me. I mean, my record does vindicate me because, as I say, I've won multiple times on these elections, but I haven't got any kind of paper record proving that. So, it's very difficult to prove the statistical significance you have in any of these things. It might be a bit more interesting if the actual result is 3% in Trump's favor. But even there's substantial variance around that estimate, even if you get it spot on. So it doesn't prove that much. Such is life. But I wanted to get this prediction out there, and hopefully you find it useful. As I said, I'm just one guy with an opinion, but I think my perspective is unique, and anybody who is considering making a significant wager should at least listen to that opinion, if only as an exercise in verifying it against their own judgment or making a plausible counter argument against it.